Hello everyone and welcome back to my official The GH24 News YouTube channel. Hope you guys are having a wonderful day. Before we begin, hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Curtis runs into Portia at the sanitarium and explains he's then as Trina asked him to speak to her friend Kai, who's having a rough time with his injury. Brad interrupts to ask Portia if he could leave a bit before moment to work out with his particular coach. Portia says that's not a lot of notice, but it shouldn't be a problem if he gets someone to cover his shift. Brad thanks her and walks off. Confused, Curtis aloud. His woman couldn't stand Brad. Portia explains Stella seems to like Brad, so she's trying to give him an alternate chance. Still, Curtis thinks he needs to have a converse with Brad, given all the effects he's pulled over the times. Portia says that's gratuitous, but he walks off. Lucas sees Carly to the elevator and asks her to at least suppose about what he said about Jack. She insists she's forfeiture, and Lucas knows she wouldn't back off seeing Jack. Carly asks if they can go to Regale now. Lucas must drop off his tablet at the nurse's station first. There, Brad shows Stella his developing biceps. Lucas comments he's looking good, and whatever his program is, it's easily working. Irked, Carly clears her throat to get Lucas down from Brad, and reminds him they've plans. Curtis goes to the nurse's station and asks Stella for a moment to speak to Brad alone. She leaves them, and Curtis asks Brad if he's still working with Selena Wu. Brad insists he and his aunt aren't working together. Curtis is glad to hear that, as he doesn't want his woman or auntie to get in trouble with her though being associated with him. Brad swears he'd no way do anything to peril the alternate chance he's been given then. Curtis checks back in with his aunt, and Stella believes Brad has turned a corner and is committed to a fresh launch. Meanwhile, Portia tells Brad to enjoy the rest of his day off. Brad asks if her hubby knows about their arrangement. Portia says he doesn't and to use discretion in the future so that nothing additional finds out about this arrangement. Brennan comes into Bobby's and grabs a table. Joss, who was at the counter, joins him. He asks if she set up anything linking Cyrus to Dex's death. Joss aloud. She had a lead but says it didn't dis out. He urges her not to give up, and she assures him she isn't. Joss explains she broke into Cyrus' place, but there was nothing indicting there and no signs that he indeed lived there. Jack says that suggests Cyrus is operating out of nearly differently. She says, so a den? She doesn't know how she'd find it. He says every felonious leaves a trail, so just be patient. Joss switches the subject to her mama. She knows they're close and asks him not to tell her mama about this as she's stressed enough. Jack says he wouldn't say a word. Carly and Lucas enter, and she wonders what Joss and Jack are talking about. Jack says he was telling Joss about the thermal cataracts in Germany. Joss returns to studying, and Lucas goes with her to see if she needs help. Alone, Carly hopes Jack didn't tell Joss about Valentine. He didn't, and she thanks him as she doesn't want Joss fussing about her. Jack says he'll no way forget that she saved his life. He also enjoyed the time they spent together. She thinks it'll be hard to eclipse the starry skies of Germany. Jack sees that as a challenge. When Carly's phone rings, she defenses herself to take it. At the counter, Lucas wonders to Joss about what's going on with Carly and Jack. Joss says as long as it's not sunny, she's on board. He sees she's fixated on searching the web for Cyrus, and she asks him if he's ever heard of a Dr. Austin Gatlin Holt. He doesn't know the Joe, and she fills him in on who he's and that he witnessed at Cyrus' parole hail. Lucas warns Joss that Cyrus is dangerous and that she shouldn't put herself on his radar. Joss promises not to do anything. Joss rushes over to Jack after her mama leaves to take a phone call. She asks him if he could find out if Austin bought or leased a house near Port Charles around the time Cyrus got out of captivity. Jack says he'll look into it. At the Quartermain gatehouse, Gio shows up with one of Amelia's toys. Brook Lynn, who's still there, explains Willow took the kitties back to Nina's. Brook Lynn admits it's her fault, and she tried to show Willow a little tough love, but it boomeranged. Gio thinks Willow will come around, but Brook Lynn fears she made everything worse. He says he understands how hard it might have been for Willow to be then without Michael, and as much as he loves Brook Lynn's family, they're a lot. Brook Lynn laughs, calling that the understatement of a century. Gio says Willow isn't grown up, and she isn't responsible for her conduct. Tracy enters and asks if Brook Lynn spoke to Willow. Tracy looks around and asks where Willow is. Brook Lynn says effects didn't go as planned, and Willow moved out with the kitties. Tracy knew this situation had a shelf life and decides to go call the attorneys. In the kitchen, Dante addresses with Chase about Anna putting him on leave. He knows Chase is part of Sam's disquisition and needs a favor. He needs to know who the person of interest is, but Chase can't tell him. Rocco walks by and overhears Dante soliciting Chase to tell him who killed Sam. He hides in the hallway and listens as Chase asks Dante not to do anything reckless and reveals their lead suspect is Cyrus. Dante asks why Cyrus would want to kill Sam. Chase says they don't have a motive, and he can't do anything with this information. Dante understands, and he wouldn't peril Sam getting justice. Tracy enters, interrupts Dante and Chase, and tells them about the developments with Drew and Willow. The espionage Rocco takes off. Tracy wants the bobbies to find out if they've any security excrescencies that allowed Drew to get in. The guys decide to walk the hedge line. Dante and Chase arrive at the gatehouse, where Brook Lynn and Gio still are. They explain what they're doing, and wanted to talk to Willow about how Drew got in. Brook Lynn says Willow and the kiddies moved out, and Dante was awaiting that to be. He says he couldn't stay at Sam's, because the recollections made it insolvable for him to move on, and Willow likely felt the same about Michael. As they bandy what Willow and Drew did, Dante notes secrets destroy lives, and they always say it's not the crime but the cover-up that gets someone in the end. In his Metro courtroom, Martin speaks with Willow over the phone about her decision to move back in with Nina. There's a knock at the door, so he tells Willow that they will speak laterally. It's Lois, who says she really needs a counsel. She thanks him for meeting her then, as she can't take the chance of being seen in his office, given that he's representing Willow. Lois needs his word what they bandy stays between them. He says of course, as long as she pays his retainer. She sends him plutocrat electronically, and they get down to business. She explains this is a delicate content that involves her son and an event that happened 21 times agone. Now, this secret could come to light and hurt a lot of people. Martin can't help her unless she tells him everything. Lois explains her son and hubby are trying to have a baby but just said about her hubby is sterile. Lois says her son has formerly had a child. She had a baby in high academy and gave it up for relinquishment. Still, the father no way knew, which is complicated because their families are close. She reveals the father is Dante, and his mama and her father are veritably good musketeers of hers. She needs to make sure they no way find out about this baby.